The house is quiet. The evening is winding down. You just finished a long, exhausting walk. Your dog circles their bed 3 times. They drop heavily onto the floor. They rest their chins squarely on their front paws. And then it happens. They open their eyes wide. They let out a long, shuddering, dramatic exhalation. To the human ear, it sounds like the weight of the entire world is resting on their furry shoulders. It sounds like an overworked employee staring at a mountain of paperwork, or a teenager who was just told to clean their room. You look down at them. You feel guilty. When your dog lets out that deep breath after you refuse to drop a piece of your steak, translation is easy. You hear it and think, "My life is a tragedy. You are withholding that delicious meat, and I am suffering." We naturally view our dogs through a primate lens. We are highly visual, emotionally complex creatures. When a human sighs, it is inextricably linked to cognitive resignation, grief, melancholy, exasperation. So most people assume dogs sigh out of sadness, boredom, or crushing disappointment. We project our own existential dread right onto their furry faces. We think they are depressed. But behavioral neuroscience tells a completely different story. Dogs do not possess the ruminative cognition required for existential sorrow. They do not sit around pondering the tragedy of a lost tennis ball. They live entirely in the present tense. A sigh is not a complex emotional expression of grief. It is a functional, physiological, and neurological action. It is a biological tool. You are not witnessing a depressed animal. You are witnessing a highly sophisticated, mechanical reset button being pressed in real time. And to understand the tool, you have to understand the machine it operates. Welcome to the Canine Autonomic Nervous System, the ANS. This is the biological control center. It manages absolutely everything your dog doesn't have to consciously think about. Heart rate, digestion, respiratory rhythm, pupillary response. The ANS acts as your dog's internal thermostat. It is constantly adjusting to keep the physical body in a state of perfect homeostasis. And it is divided into 2 primary branches. Think of them as the gas pedal and the brake pedal of a high-performance sports car. Both are absolutely vital. But if you press the wrong one at the wrong time, the entire system crashes. First, the gas pedal. This is the sympathetic nervous system, the infamous fight, flight, or freeze network. When a dog perceives a threat, a challenge, or a sudden exciting stimulus, like a squirrel, the doorbell, or a favorite squeaky toy, this system activates instantly. The brain is flooded with adrenaline and cortisol. The dog's heart rate spikes. Blood is violently diverted away from the digestive tract and pushed straight into the skeletal muscles. The pupils dilate to let in maximum light. Respiration becomes fast and shallow. The dog is now biologically primed for explosive action. They are ready to hunt. They are ready to survive. But staying in this sympathetic state is incredibly expensive. A dog cannot live perpetually with the gas pedal pressed to the floor. It burns too much biological fuel. It causes severe chronic stress. It leads to compromised immune systems, reactive aggression, and severe behavioral degradation. The dog's body desperately needs a reliable mechanism to switch off the gas and press the brakes. Enter the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest network. This system slows the heart. It lowers blood pressure. It redirects blood back to the stomach. It is the biological state of absolute safety. But the transition between the gas and the brake is not always automatic. Sometimes the dog's brain gets stuck. The adrenaline is still pumping, but the threat is gone. They have to manually shift gears. How do they do it? The answer lies in cranial nerve 10, the vagus nerve. This is the longest and most complex nerve in the canine body. It is an information superhighway. It runs directly from the brainstem down through the neck into the deep chest and branches out into the heart, the lungs, and the gut. It is the primary driving force of the parasympathetic nervous system. It is the physical brake pedal. In the 1990s, Dr. Stephen Porges introduced the polyvagal theory. It was a massive paradigm shift in mammalian biology. Dr. Porges proved that the vagus nerve is responsible for slowing down the heart and fostering states of calm and social engagement. The strength of this nerve is called vagal tone. A dog with high vagal tone can easily switch from high arousal, like chasing a ball, to calm relaxation. A dog with low vagal tone struggles. They pace, they pant, they whine long after the stimulating event has ended. They are trapped in a sympathetic loop. They need a way to stimulate the vagus nerve manually. Here is the most critical piece of the puzzle. The vagus nerve is directly tied to respiration. Veterinary cardiologists observe a phenomenon in healthy dogs called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, RSA. When your dog breathes in, their heart rate slightly speeds up. That is sympathetic activation. But when your dog breathes out, their heart rate slows down. That is parasympathetic activation. Therefore, a prolonged, deep exhalation is not an expression of sadness. It is a biological hack. By artificially extending the exhalation, the dog is manually stimulating the vagus nerve. They are forcing their own heart rate to drop. But why a sigh? Why not just normal, slow breathing? To answer that, we have to look inside the lungs. Inside your dog's chest are millions of tiny, balloon-like air sacs called alveoli. This is where oxygen enters the bloodstream. During normal, resting breathing, not all of these tiny balloons inflate. Over time, they begin to naturally collapse. This microscopic collapse is called atelectasis. If too many collapse, blood oxygen drops. In 2016, researchers at UCLA and Stanford University made a stunning discovery. They published it in the journal Nature. They found two tiny clusters of neurons in the mammalian brainstem, a literal sigh generator. When the brain detects collapsing alveoli, it fires specific neuropeptides. It orders a deep sigh. The sigh generator forces a double intake of air followed by a long, slow exhalation. This physical action aggressively pops the collapsed alveoli back open. It coats them in surfactant, a vital fluid that keeps them from sticking together. It restores maximum oxygen exchange. So, every single sigh your dog lets out serves a brilliant dual purpose. First, it is mechanical. It reinflates dying lung tissue. Second, it is neurological. It stimulates the vagus nerve to apply the parasympathetic brake. But ethologists and animal behaviorists take this even further, because not all sighs are created equal. To understand the behavior behind the biology, we have to look to the ancient past. Long before the couch, the memory foam beds, and the central heating, wild canids and ancient wolves lived in a world of constant, unrelenting threat. The predator-prey dynamic demanded that they sleep lightly. A dog in the wild cannot afford to fully relax. A dog in a sympathetic state must maintain heavy muscle tension. They must be ready to flee or fight at a moment's notice. Their eyes must remain wide open to scan the tree line for danger. Vulnerability was a death sentence. The transition from waking vigilance to deep sleep was the most dangerous moment of their day. Evolution required a physical parasympathetic marker, a signal to the rest of the pack that the perimeter was secure. The deep, audible sigh became that marker. It was a communal broadcast. I am powering down. The threat has passed. This ancient survival mechanism is hardwired into the genetic code of the modern domestic dog. When your golden retriever sighs on the living room rug, they are echoing a ritual forged in Ice Age forests. But in the modern home, this ancient reflex has split into two highly distinct behavioral categories. And you can tell them apart by looking at exactly one feature on your dog's face: the eyes. Picture this scenario. You have just taken your dog for a long, enriching safari walk. They have eaten their dinner. The house is totally quiet. Your dog circles their bed, lies down, and lets out a long sigh. Notice their face. Their eyes are half closed or completely shut. This is the type 1 sigh. It is the ultimate expression of parasympathetic dominance. In veterinary terminology, the half-closed eyes are referred to as ptosis of the eyelids. It indicates a complete release of tension in the facial muscles. This lack of tension is the ultimate somatic marker of environmental safety. Your dog trusts you implicitly. During a type 1 sigh, a magnificent chemical cascade occurs inside your dog's body. First, the stress hormone cortisol halts production. Second, the extended exhalation heavily stimulates the vagus nerve, causing an immediate, measurable drop in heart rate. This is clinical bradycardia. Third, the microtremors in the dog's skeletal muscles, kept active by sympathetic tone, finally release. The dog physically melts into the floor. And finally, the brain releases a mild dose of endogenous opioids, endorphins, promoting a deep feeling of well-being. When you hear a type 1 sigh, do not feel guilty. Feel complimented. They feel perfectly safe. But now, picture a completely different scenario. You are playing fetch in the living room. Suddenly, the ball bounces beneath the sofa. It is just out of reach. Your dog digs at the fabric for a minute. They whine. They look at you for help. You are busy, so you ignore them. After a few agonizing moments, the dog lies down facing the sofa. They rest their head on their paws, and they let out a long, heavy, dramatic sigh. But look at their face. Their eyes remain wide open. They are staring fiercely at the sofa. This is the type 2 sigh. It has absolutely nothing to do with sleep. This is active downregulation. Frustration is a state of severe sympathetic arousal. Your dog has a goal: retrieve the ball. They are biologically flooded with the adrenaline required to achieve that goal. When the goal becomes suddenly unattainable, they are left with a massive surplus of nervous energy and nowhere to direct it. In behavioral psychology, when a subject is denied a reinforced outcome, they experience an extinction burst, a temporary, frantic increase in behavior: digging, whining, barking. But when the dog realizes the extinction burst is useless, they are faced with a biological crisis. How do I get rid of this toxic excess adrenaline? They have to manually kill the engine. The type 2 sigh is your dog actively standing on the vagal brake pedal. They are not sighing because they are depressed about the ball. They are sighing because their brain recognizes that the sympathetic arousal is no longer useful. They must physically force their body to calm down. The key indicator is the open eyes. The dog's brain has not yet transitioned into a state of safety. The sympathetic nervous system is still lingering, keeping the eyes open and highly vigilant, locked onto the source of frustration. The sigh is a conscious effort to self-soothe. It is a brilliant display of canine emotional intelligence. Renowned dog trainer and behaviorist Turid Rugas is famous for her groundbreaking work on canine calming signals. Dogs use incredibly subtle body language cues to de-escalate situations and avoid conflict. Yawning, lip licking, turning the head away. Rugaas notes that while these are social signals, the open-eyed sigh is an internal calming signal. It is an act of emotional regulation. It is exactly like a human taking a slow, deep, counted breath when they feel themselves losing their temper in traffic. The dog is using the mechanical force of respiration to literally command their own heart rate to slow down. To truly master dog psychology, you must realize that a vocalization is never just a sound. The sigh is merely the punctuation mark at the end of a sentence written entirely in body language. You must look at the whole animal. Look at the ear position. During a relaxed, parasympathetic sigh, the ears are in their neutral base position. They hang loosely. But during a frustrated, down-regulation sigh, the ears may still be pinned back in stress, or they might be swiveled sharply forward, locked onto the object of their frustration, like radar dishes. The ears tell you exactly which nervous system is currently in the driver's seat. Look at the facial tension, the commissures, the corners of the mouth. In a relaxed type 1 sigh, the commissures are loose and soft. The jaw is slack. In a frustrated type 2 sigh, the mouth is closed tightly. The commissures are pulled back in a subtle stress grimace. Tension vibrates in the whisker bed. Now, look at the tail. A parasympathetic tail rests flat, heavy, and lifeless on the floor. A sympathetic, frustrated tail may be rigidly straight. The very tip might be twitching slightly. That twitch is residual adrenaline violently trying to escape the physical body. The dog is fighting a literal chemical war inside their own veins. But here is the most important lesson in this entire video. While behavioral sighing is a beautiful, healthy part of canine autoregulation, it can also be a red flag, because dogs cannot verbally report pain. They are masters of masking weakness. They often rely on respiratory changes to cope with severe physiological distress. If a dog is sighing excessively, or if the sigh sounds labored, wet, or ends in a sharp groan, you must immediately drop the psychology manual. It is time to put on the veterinary hat. A sudden change in sighing behavior often indicates a hidden, underlying medical issue. It is a cry for help disguised as a breath. According to specialists at VCA animal hospitals, heavy sighing is one of the most overlooked early indicators of osteoarthritis. As dogs age, cartilage degrades. Lying down and standing up become deeply painful endeavors. A senior dog may let out a heavy sigh or a low groan when lying down, but they are not relaxing. The physical act of joint compression literally hurts. They are exhaling to push through the spike of pain. This medical sigh is almost always accompanied by distinct hesitation before lying down. They will circle excessively. They will shift their weight awkwardly from front to back. They are bracing for impact. Listen to the acoustic quality of the sigh. If it sounds wet, wheezy, or rattling, it is a massive red flag. This indicates underlying respiratory or cardiac disease. Conditions like congestive heart failure, chronic bronchitis, or laryngeal paralysis, which is incredibly common in older, large breeds like Labrador retrievers. These diseases physically obstruct the airway or fill the lungs with fluid. The dog is sighing constantly because they are literally drowning in slow motion. They are desperately trying to fully oxygenate their blood. If the sigh sounds like it is pushing through liquid, do not wait. Book a veterinary appointment immediately. Finally, watch for gastrointestinal distress. Dogs suffering from severe acid reflux, deadly pancreatitis, or general GI blockages will frequently sigh heavily. but they will do it while holding a very specific posture. They stretch their front legs forward, bowing low to the ground, while keeping their rear end raised high in the air. This is known in veterinary medicine as the prayer position. The sigh, combined with this posture, is a desperate attempt to alleviate excruciating pressure inside the abdominal cavity. They are trying to stretch their organs to stop the burning. It is a medical emergency. Here is the golden rule of thumb for every pet parent. A behavioral sigh is circumstantial. It happens after a play session, after a large meal, or during a quiet, winding down evening. It makes contextual sense. A medical sigh is chronic. It is repetitive. It happens randomly, irrespective of the environmental context. The dog will sigh while staring at a blank wall. If your dog's sighing habits change suddenly overnight or increase dramatically in frequency, trust your gut. The vagus nerve isn't regulating emotion anymore. It is screaming that the physical machine is breaking down. Pay attention to the baseline. But if your dog is healthy, the sigh reveals the most beautiful aspect of the human-canine bond. Mammals are highly social creatures. Our autonomic nervous systems do not exist in a vacuum. We possess the profound biological ability to literally sync our nervous systems with the beings around us. In psychology, this phenomenon is known as co-regulation. When a mother holds a screaming human infant and takes slow, deep, deliberate breaths, the infant's nervous system reads the mother's physiological cues. The infant's heart rate begins to slow down to match the mother's. The exact same cross-species co-regulation occurs between you and your dog. If you come home from a miserable, highly stressful day at work, your sympathetic nervous system is heavily active. You are physically emitting stress pheromones. Your dog can smell them. Your heart rate is elevated. Your breathing is fast and shallow. Your dog's brain reads this biometric data perfectly, and their own sympathetic nervous system activates in response. They become anxious. They pace the living room. They whine. They cannot settle down on their bed. They are biologically tethered to your emotional state. They are borrowing your anxiety. Because in the wild, if the pack leader is stressed, a predator is nearby. They are preparing for war. But you have the power to fix it. If you sit heavily on the couch, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let out a long, audible sigh, you are manually applying your own vagal brake. Your dog instantly perceives this shift. Your sigh signals to your dog's brain that the environment is finally safe. The invisible threat has passed. It is acceptable to power down. Often, a human letting out a deep sigh will immediately trigger the dog to lie down, close their eyes halfway, and let out a type 1 parasympathetic sigh in direct response. Your vagus nerve has effectively communicated with their vagus nerve. No language required. So, how should you respond to your dog's sighs? If it's a type 1 sigh, half-closed eyes, total relaxation, do absolutely nothing. Leave them be. They have successfully shifted into a deep, restorative state. Disturbing them for a cute cuddle might inadvertently pull them right back into sympathetic arousal. Let sleeping dogs lie. But if it's a type 2 sigh, open eyes, severe frustration, acknowledge their self-regulation. Do not give them the toy they are begging for, which only reinforces the frustration. Instead, offer slow, rhythmic petting on their chest. This tactile stimulation assists them in their desperate effort to self-soothe. The next time your dog drops their heavy head onto their paws and lets out a long, dramatic exhalation, stop what you are doing. Look directly at their eyes. resist the overwhelming human urge to project a false narrative of sadness, depression, or existential boredom onto them. Instead, appreciate the breathtaking biological machinery at work. Whether they are popping open microscopic alveoli in their lungs to prevent collapse, signaling absolute trust in their environment, or actively battling their own frustration by slamming the brakes on their autonomic nervous system. The canine sigh is an absolute masterclass in mammalian self-regulation. Dogs are not depressed when they sigh. They are surviving. They are adapting. They are finding neurological balance in a loud, chaotic human world. And perhaps, in our own fast-paced, chronically stressed human lives, we could learn a thing or two from our dogs. Because sometimes, the absolute best way to deal with the crushing weight of the world isn't to fight it. It is simply to lie down. Close your eyes, let out a long, shuddering breath, and hit the biological reset button. The dog sigh is not just a sound. It is a 40,000-year-old evolutionary anchor. It is the sound of survival, trust, and the profound chemical connection between two entirely different species syncing their nervous systems in the dark. I want to know about your dog. What exactly does your dog do right before they let out their deepest sigh of the day? Let me know in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe, because in the next video, we are breaking down the science of the canine head tilt, and the evolutionary truth behind it is even stranger than you'd expect.